no secret Canadian snowbirds haven't been flocking to South Florida lately. President Trump's immigration rules and tariffs have caused controversy in Canada.
Sherryville on Dania Beach is a popular hangout for Canadian snowbirds. The question is, will they be packing the place this winter?
A lot of them will not come because of Trump and what was going on with Canada. They just don't want to come and spend their money here. The cost of living here has changed a lot. Everything went up.
Florida, the land of beaches, sunshine, and billion-dollar vacations, just made a move that could erase decades of progress. The same state once hailed as America's tourism crown jewel is now facing an economic implosion, and it's entirely self-inflicted. It started with Trump's fiery 51st state remark, meant to provoke, but it hit Florida where it hurts most: Canadian tourism. Within months, visitors vanished, hotel bookings collapsed, and beachfront towns went eerily quiet. But instead of stabilizing the crisis, Florida's leaders doubled down, targeting the very marketing programs that kept the industry alive. What was sold as cutting government waste now looks more like cutting Florida's own lifeline. Tonight, we break down how political pride, short-term thinking, and economic denial combine to sabotage one of America's most profitable industries. If you're new here, make sure to like, subscribe, and keep watching. To understand how Florida's economy began unraveling, you have to start with the relationship it built over decades, not with Washington, but with Canada. For millions of Canadians, Florida wasn't just a vacation spot, it was their second home. Snowbirds poured into Fort Myers, Naples, and Clearwater every winter, spending nearly $20 billion a year on hotels, rentals, restaurants, and golf courses. They weren't tourists, they were a lifeline. Roughly 640,000 Canadians crossed the border every quarter, many spending over $30,000 per household each season. Florida's entire tourism model was built on that dependable migration south, but in early 2025 that bond shattered. It began with a single line from Donald Trump, calling Canada America's 51st state. At first, it sounded like typical political theater. But combined with a wave of new tariffs and trade jabs, it turned personal for Canadians. Boycotts spread on social media overnight. Travel agencies began reporting cancellations across Alberta and Ontario. By spring, the numbers were catastrophic, an 80% drop in Canadian visitors, wiping out an estimated $20 billion in spending and threatening 140,000 jobs tied directly to cross-border tourism. "We've survived hurricanes and recessions," one Clearwater hotel manager said, "but we've never seen the beaches this empty." Restaurants cut shifts. Small towns that once thrived on snowbird traffic were suddenly ghost towns. Still, instead of addressing the fallout, Florida lawmakers chose a shocking new target: the Tourist Development Councils, TDCs. For decades, these 62 councils managed the marketing budgets that kept Florida's tourism brand strong. Collectively, they generated nearly $2 billion in annual revenue, promoting everything from Gulf Coast beaches to small inland attractions. But under pressure from budget hawks and populist rhetoric, legislators proposed abolishing them entirely. Their argument? Florida sells itself. Why spend billions promoting paradise when everyone already knows it exists? On paper, it sounded efficient, even patriotic. Lawmakers promised that cutting the TDCs would save taxpayers money and streamline tourism marketing. But industry experts warned that it was an economic suicide note. Carol Dover, head of the Florida Restaurant and Lodging Association, called the move economic sabotage. She reminded lawmakers that tourism marketing isn't waste, it's insurance. Florida competes with places like Hawaii, California, and even the Caribbean, where governments spend heavily to attract visitors. Without that promotional muscle, Florida risked losing visibility, just as its reputation took a global hit from the Canada fallout. But in the political echo chamber, facts lost to ideology. The state's leadership framed the move as draining the swamp, cutting what they called bloated tourism bureaucracies. Yet behind the headlines, major counties warned of a $37 billion economic hit if the councils disappeared. Those numbers weren't projections, they came from Florida's own tourism economists. Meanwhile, irony filled the air. Just a year earlier, Florida celebrated a record 143 million visitors, fueling $150 billion in total economic impact. Tourism wasn't just an industry, it was 1/4 of the state's identity. Now it was being gutted in the name of political symbolism. What began as a diplomatic fallout with Canada was morphing into a full-blown domestic crisis. The boycott had cracked the foundation, but policy choices were finishing the job. Even local chambers of commerce, often loyal to conservative leadership, began issuing public warnings. "This isn't about politics anymore," one wrote. "It's about survival." And that survival was slipping away fast. As lawmakers debated in Tallahassee, real-life consequences hit small businesses first. Hotel occupancy in key counties dropped double digits. Beach rentals went unsold. By late summer, signs reading "for sale" and "closed until further notice" stretched across the Gulf Coast. But this wasn't just about Florida's finances, it was about its future. Tourism is emotional capital. It's how the world feels about a place. When that goodwill evaporates, rebuilding it takes years. And Florida's leaders were burning through that goodwill faster than ever. Still, the question remained, could this crisis be reversed? Or had Florida's leaders already crossed the point of no return? Up next, we'll explore the irony behind Florida's political gamble, how the same leaders who once celebrated record tourism are now dismantling the very system that built it. Florida's downfall wasn't instant. It unfolded in slow motion, disguised as reform. In early debates, state leaders framed the cuts as empowering local freedom. They claimed counties would find new, more efficient ways to promote tourism. But the truth was simpler. Without centralized coordination, marketing budgets collapsed, and the vacuum was immediate. Ads disappeared from international airports, travel agencies, and sports broadcasts that once carried the iconic "Visit Florida" message. For the first time in decades, rival destinations began outspending Florida in global tourism campaigns. California launched an aggressive West Coast Escape initiative. Hawaii doubled its digital outreach in Canada, and Mexico poured millions into Snowbird marketing. The tourists who once saw Florida as their winter default were now being courted elsewhere. The result? Even deeper economic bleeding. By late 2025, the state's own economists were forced to confront the numbers. Total visitor spending had dropped by $37 billion, the very scenario industry experts had warned about. The state's tourism sector, responsible for over 2 million jobs, was showing cracks. From waiters in Tampa to condo owners in Sarasota, livelihoods were vanishing. And yet state leaders doubled down again, insisting the free market would correct itself, but the free market can't advertise what people no longer trust. The Canadian boycott had become a symbol of something larger, a protest not just against U.S. tariffs, but against the arrogance of ignoring economic reality. For Canadian families, skipping Florida wasn't just a political statement, it was about principle. Florida's image as a carefree, all-welcome destination was fading into something colder, ideological, divided, and uncertain. On the ground, the ripple effects were brutal. Fort Myers Beach, once buzzing with retirees and families, saw property listings triple. Miami's cruise terminals faced cancellations. Rental platforms like Airbnb reported plunging bookings in what should have been peak season. And small towns, which relied on TDC-funded campaigns, were hit hardest. "We used to get tour buses every morning," one inn owner said. "Now we just count cars passing by." Then came the cruel irony. As Florida's tourism revenue evaporated, the promised tax relief that lawmakers championed, roughly $60 per household, became meaningless. What was the point of a small tax cut if it cost the state tens of billions in economic activity? Analysts called it the $60 mistake, saving pennies while burning dollars. By now, even conservative economists were issuing warnings, reports. Meanwhile, other states were learning from Florida's failure. Texas quietly expanded its tourism budget by 15%, targeting displaced visitors through digital campaigns. California ran ads directly referencing warmer welcomes. Florida's competitors weren't just capitalizing on its mistakes, they were defining themselves in opposition to it. Behind closed doors, Florida's hospitality leaders pleaded for a policy reversal. Meetings grew tense. Lobbyists warned that once lost, brand trust could take up to 5 years to rebuild, even longer if the state remained politically unpredictable. For many, it was déjà vu, watching an economic powerhouse crumble under the weight of ideology. And as the year closed, the picture was grim. Vacant beachfront condos, shuttered restaurants, and fading Visit Florida billboards stood as silent monuments to political miscalculation, Once a symbol of leisure and prosperity, Florida had become a cautionary tale, a warning that no state, no matter how sunny, is immune from self-destruction when politics overtakes economics. So what do you think? Did Florida's leaders act out of principle or pride? Could this have been prevented, or was it inevitable once politics became theater? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I read every one of them, and if you found this breakdown insightful, make sure to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. Because we're diving deeper into how political decisions reshape economies across North America. Stay tuned.